Ooh. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I love that everyone's super happy and chatting. That's awesome. And I'm really excited to welcome everyone to tonight's event here at the ICA. I'm Monica Garza. I'm the Charlotte Wagner Director of Education here at the museum. And this evening, we all celebrate a Caribbean Boston. I want to be sure to take some time to thank our many partners for their help in this celebration this evening. Thank you to DJ Kensworth, did you all hear the tunes coming in? For the sounds greeting our visitors tonight. And also to Fresh Food Generation for their featured menu items in the cafe as well. I heard that the cafe is jumping downstairs. Hopefully there will still be empanadas by the end of the night. We're also grateful to curator, writer, city planner, and educator Romy St. Hilaire, founder of Art in the Antilles, for her digital contributions in our media tech space on the 4th floor. Romy created a resource that highlights the work of 5 creatives of Caribbean heritage living and working in Boston. And I believe all of them are here in the audience tonight. So please wave. I don't know if I can see you in the dark, but please wave if I call your name. A big thank you to Romy, as well as Jay Cottle, Ali Michelle, Yvette Modestine, and Mar Paria. So everyone is invited to stop by the 4th floor Media Tech after the talk to access the digital resource and to also view our featured exhibition, Forecast Form, Art in the Caribbean Diaspora, 1990s to Today. I also want to thank and briefly introduce our speakers for tonight's forum. City Councilor at Large, Mejia really needs no introduction if you follow local politics. But for those new to Boston or who don't follow city news, Councilor Mejia has created countless opportunities for others and to advocate for positive change as a community organizer. Following the 2019 election and a historic 2-month recount, she won her seat by a single vote. Is now the first Afro-Latina to sit on the Boston City Council. And a big congratulations on your re-election this past fall as well. Councilwoman Mejia is currently the chair of the Committee on Education, the Committee on Government Accountability, Transparency and Accessibility, as well as the Committee on Labor, Workforce, and Economic Development. Thank you for joining us. Gabriel Sosa is a Cuban-American artist, educator, and curator. His work has been shown at the Fitchburg Art Museum, the Contemporary Jewish Museum in San Francisco, Fábrica de Arte Cubano in Havana, Tufts University Art Galleries, and many other sites. He has been an artist in residence in venues including Urbano Project, Santa Cruz Museum of Art, Mass MoCA, Santa Fe Art Institute, and many other sites. Most recently, he was named as one of the makers by WBUR, a recognition highlighting creatives of color making an impact in this region. Sosa is a visiting assistant professor in the art education department at MassArt and deputy director of Essex Art Center in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Althea Blackford is the owner of V-Style Productions. She's the creative mind behind the local fashion TV show Style It Up on Boston Neighborhood Network, spotlighting New England fashion designers. Her commitment to showcasing talent extends beyond regional boundaries, as she also stands as the founder and executive producer of Boston Caribbean Fashion Week. She's also been a partner with the ICA for Caribbean Fashion Week for, I heard, 10 years now, so thank you for that. Blackford is also the founder and travel advisor for Destination Let's Go. With over a decade of expertise, she specializes in crafting personalized trips to the Caribbean. She is a storyteller weaving tales of style and exploration. Anthony Febo is a Puerto Rican poet, teaching artist, and new dad. He is a co-founder of the Lowell-based youth poetry organization Freeverse and has toured the country individually and as half of Adobo Fish Sauce, a cooking and poetry collaboration. He has competed on numerous slam teams at the National Poetry Slam and coached youth teams at the International Brave New Voices and also Massachusetts Louder Than a Bomb poetry festivals. A teaching artist for over 15 years, Febo has taught throughout the greater Boston area. In 2022, he was one of 2 U.S. teaching artists invited to represent ICA teen arts education practices to Italian school educators during the Venice Biennale. Febo's first full-length book of poetry, Becoming an Island, was published through Game Over Books. So our moderator this evening is Danielle Legros Georges. A poet, literary translator, educator, and friend, she is the author of several books of poetry, including Maroon, The Dear Remote Nearness of You, and Island Heart, a translation of Ida Fauber's poetry. And I just learned also that as of December 2023, she also released Wheatley, a 250 Black women poets reimagined the verse of Phyllis Wheatley Peters, and she edited this publication. In 2004, Danielle was named Boston's Poet Laureate. Her 4-year term included collaborations with area artists, organizations, museums, libraries, and schools, and representing Boston at international literary events. Danielle also serves on the ICA Artist Advisory, and I'm very grateful for her partnership in developing this program with me. So now, please help me welcome Danielle to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, ICA. Thank you, Eliza. I'm very happy to be here with my colleagues and with you to think about and discuss the Caribbean and Caribbean-ness in Boston in the context of the wonderful exhibition upstairs. We know the Caribbean to be a space of great complexity and great diversity, a space significant to world history. Caribbean-ness scholars and historians agree that central to studies of the area have been the dynamics of plantation slavery, empire, revolutions, including the significant Haitian and Cuban revolutions of 1804 and 1959, respectively, as well as the dynamics of emancipatory thought and of labor and migration. Theorists underscore the Caribbean as a place of interconnections, not only among the states and territories of the archipelago, the island chain, but with Latin America, the Atlantic world, with Africa, with Asia. The Caribbean is understood as a space of blendings and creolizations. A fundamental question theorists have raised is, what is the Caribbean? It's a question also posed by the curators of the exhibition, who note that the work of the exhibition reveals the region as a space defined by constant exchange, movement, and displacement. The concept of diaspora, communities of people who no longer live in their original homelands, then complicates in fruitful ways the inquiry, the question, what is the Caribbean? And it's a question for us this evening, members of the diaspora in Boston, along with what is Caribbean-ness? So one way to get into this is with a reference to geography, by which I mean we're going to do a drive-by geography history here. So here is the oldest, or one of the oldest known maps of the Caribbean, published in Seville in Spain in 1511, of islands inhabited by the Arawak, the Taino, the Carib, the Siboney, and other peoples and nations who were not discovered by Columbus. In what year? This is the interactive portion. 92. So how do you know this? You know this because perhaps of a rhyme. In 1492, what happened? Oh, indoctrination. You see how we have been indoctrinated with the use of rhyme. So the map depicts the Caribbean basin We see the islands of Cuba, Hispaniola, now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Jamaica with the coast of Florida and Central America. Both Spanish and indigenous place names appear. Cuba, or Cuba, is believed to come from the Taino language, the word cubao, and Jamaica from the Arawak word shamaka. Right? So these are the islands that will become known as the Greater Antilles, or the Antilles, the larger islands of the Caribbean. Not depicted on this Caribbean map are the Lesser Antilles. So, slide, please. The smaller islands that form along the arc between the Greater Antilles and the continent of South America. This is an 18th century map made by a French cartographer. So the name Antilles, or Antilles, is thought to be a reference to a mythical land European and other explorers believed to exist in the Atlantic Ocean. And as you know, the term West Indies is an echo or afterlife of Columbus's belief that he had reached where? When he landed on an island that is now a part of the Bahamas. He called it San Salvador, right? The West Indies can refer to a number now of Anglophone or English-speaking states or territories of the Caribbean, and as you know, there are many, many languages spoken in the Caribbean. And then there are some of us who refer to all of the Caribbean as the West Indies, and then y'all are just gonna have to work it out, okay? Work it out. So within the greater Caribbean, more than 700 islands and islets are sovereign states, independent countries, 13 of them, and many, many territories. The former independent states include Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, and Barbados. I won't shout out all of the sovereign states, but we believe in self-determination, and we see you. Caribbean territories are numerous. These are the non-sovereign states. And then slide. Politically associated with, administered by, deeply enmeshed economically with the United Kingdom, for example, with France, with the United States, with the Netherlands, with Venezuela, whether those arrangements are supported by the people of those territories or not. And they include Puerto Rico, administered by the United States, Aruba and Curacao, administered by the Netherlands, Martinique and Guadeloupe, which are considered a département d'outre-mer. This is a chance to show off my French here. Département d'outre-mer, French overseas departments in the Americas, part of France. The British Virgin Islands, administered by, okay, you got it, and Nueva Esparta, administered by Venezuela. So what does it mean for a space of the Caribbean to be administered by or considered a part of another country, particularly when that country is a former colonizer, right? What do these relationships mean for Caribbean peoples? What may be the benefits and tensions of affiliation? What are questions of governance, citizenship, power, or how are these questions, statelessness, negotiated? Right? And what if foreign states forced to contend with former colonial powers or current powerful neighbors, external interests that may attempt to dictate their domestic affairs? And I'm thinking of Haiti, for example, my place of birth and ancestral home, and the United States' decades-long support of a brutal dictatorship that made life untenable for many Haitians and drove them from their home and some to Boston, including my family. Right? How are questions of encouraged or forced emigration connected to diaspora? And how has Boston received and been expanded by Caribbean people? What has been the impact on the city by folks of Caribbean roots. And we know that New England and the Caribbean have been linked economically since the 17th century, that Boston merchants played essential roles in upholding the sugar plantation economy of the Caribbean, providing plantations with supplies. Cod from New England, for example, was transported to feed enslaved laborers of the Caribbean. A quick aside, there's a wonderful research library in Worcester, Massachusetts, the American Antiquarian Society, that has one of the best collection of newspapers from the area, from the Caribbean, starting in the 1700s. So I just wanted to shout out the AAS. And we know that voluntary migration of people from the Caribbean to Boston began in the late 19th century, and we would see immigration from the Caribbean increase in the 20th century and include many of us who would live and work and make meaningful contributions to the city and the area in a number of fields. So, slide, please, of one of my favorite pieces in the exhibition. And then another slide. Another, I think, remarkable piece in the exhibition. And so this is where I turn to my colleagues, and I'm happy to turn to my colleagues to be in conversation with them and invite them to the stage. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Febo, Althea, Gabriel, Councilor, Mejia, Julia, for being here. Before we talk about your work as Boston area creatives and creative leaders with ties to the Caribbean, I would love your perceptions of philosophies, of ideas on Caribbean-ness broadly. You know, I want to crack this open. What it might be, what you feel it is, what it might not be. Gabriel and I had a brief conversation last week, and he raised the question of tropes that often come up when we think about the Caribbean, right? So what is it? What might it not be? What are the cliches, stereotypes that we bump up against when we're thinking about the Caribbean? And then more particularly, how you think about, are in conversation or perhaps in tension with your own Caribbean-ness. And finally, I'm throwing a bunch of questions at you. Would you mind sharing with us something about your roots? Your roots and the roots, R-O-U-T-E-S, traversed or taken by you, your family, your peeps, to ultimately arrive here in Boston. So I'm going to pitch it to Febo, and I hope you don't mind starting.
Oh, of course, this is what we're here for. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hello. In terms of thinking about some of the tropes or the things that make something like Caribbean-esque, I'm Puerto Rican, and so for me that's as simple as yelling out to a crowd of Latino people, "Huepa!" and then hearing that back. You know what I mean? So there's something about that is beautiful, that you can throw at a huepa and it's kind of like a back signal, and you'll know you get your peoples. But for me, it shows up really in the music. For me, it's salsa, it's merengue, it's bachata, it's cumbia, it's the food, it's the plantains, it's the seasonings, it's the care that goes into the food that sometimes lacks when I am eating somewhere here. There's just like not a lot of love or flavor, and And it's the rhythm, it's the life that comes with it, right? Because I was born and raised in Lowell, Massachusetts, but my parents were born and raised in Puerto Rico, and we lived in Puerto Rico for a couple of years, and the idea was to stay there, but we moved back, and when I moved back, I noticed that there was just a lack of rhythm, but not in a judgmental way, but just like in a way that is like, oh, there's, in Puerto Rico, there's a saying, con salsa todo se arregla. Like with salsa, you can just make anything better. And just like whether it's the dancing of it, the singing of it, you listen to some of the lyrics, and they don't necessarily match with the rhythm. They'll be like, this is the worst day of my life, I'm so sad. And you're just like, and so there's something about that, about like incorporating that into the everyday that I try to instill in my family and wherever it is that I go, really, you know? That's for now. That's good. That feels good.
Thank you, Febo. Althea, would you like?
Where does one begin this choo-choo train? All right. Well, hello, everyone. So in terms of, I would say, to make it easy, where's my background? I was born here, very much American. But if you make me upset, you'll question that. And a lot of you will know that from a Caribbean side. So with my background, my mother is from Barbados and my father is from Jamaica. So you can say it's a sweet spice, depending on how you want to look at it. But in terms of my parents coming up here, wanting to come here to better themselves, which is the main, I guess you could say, underlying story that a lot of folks, especially in the Caribbean, have. That they want to improve their well-being because the conditions of what's happening at home is not that great, and you want to advance yourself better, so you come to America. And that's how that is. And my parents met in Massachusetts. My mother came up to New York first, and then eventually went to school in Boston. And my father, when he first came up here, he came up through a nursing program, and he started in Waltham. And I never got the full story on how he got to Boston, but he got to Boston. But it was rather interesting. It's rather fascinating to think back. I'm like, how do you guys come from hot climate coming to a cold state? Never get that part, but that's okay, because after a while, my mother's just like, I can't do these winters anymore. So she's just like, I need warmer or I'm gonna go home. So with that, her best friend was already in Miami, or in Florida, I should say, and said, come on down, spend some time with me, and you may like Florida from there. And Miami, to be exact, is like copy-paste Caribbean, especially South Florida, to be exact. So with that, you have like the different cultures, you name it, whatever you're looking for within food, culture, style, just say it, there's somebody who will point you to that area of part of Florida, or Miami to be exact, or South Florida. So my mother enjoyed that, and she's just like, yep, nope, we're moving. So off to Miami I went. So I was born here, but I'm a Miami girl. I'm of both worlds, you could say. So with that, but in terms of what makes up Caribbean-ness for me, as people have said, it's just, there's a lot of elements that just, there's not one thing. It's the food, the music, not so much the clothing, because clothing is based on where you exactly are, but maybe your style of how you dress, and this may be the fashion part of me coming in, but just the style of how you dress and present yourself through. So, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that transition about Miami. So I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. My entire background is Cuban on both sides as far as can be traced. And, I never really considered growing up Cuban to be special until I left Miami. Because, where I grew up in Miami, on 67th and Bird, if there's any Miamians in the crowd, everyone was Cuban. If both of your parents weren't Cuban, then one of them was, or maybe you yourself had grown up on the island. And even I was just telling someone the other day, the elementary school I went to, there you could count on your hand the number of students who were Anglo-Saxon white. I mean, everyone was Cuban. And it wasn't until leaving Miami, I mean, living here, living in Madrid, living in New York, and just traveling around where I realized how special being Cuban American was. I mean, I guess you define yourself by what you aren't. And before that, I really hadn't had the opportunity to see what I wasn't. So, you know, and here I feel like, you know, I went to school here, fell in love, have a beautiful daughter, and like so many places, right? If you just stay still long enough, you kind of end up developing some roots. Being Cuban American, you know, Danielle, you and I had spoken about these tropes, and so often, if I'll share my background, I mean, people might be like, "Oh my God, you're Cuban! I love the cars," and it's like, okay, you know, like, you know, are you a really good salsa dancer? You know, which I love salsa, but I'm like a terrible salsa dancer. And these things, it's like, well, no, you know, Cuban culture isn't that. And you know, I think of the complexities of the Caribbean. I was in Miami just a couple weeks ago, and someone was saying just how hot Miami is and how steamy and sticky it is. And I was like, well, like, I really love it. I feel like the air is giving you a hug, you know? and that's like my feeling. But at the same time, you know, it's not that for a lot of people, and the heat can be oppressive in all senses of the word. And I feel that the Caribbean it's so emblematic of complexity in how life is just far more complex than the surface appears to be.
Yeah. Thank you.
I got a mic. It's working, right?
Yes.
All right. So thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you all this evening. So, you know, I think I was born in the Dominican Republic. So I'm an Afro-Latina because I know that when they abducted our ancestors, the only port, you know, the only difference was the port that they dropped us off at, right? So really recognizing my Black roots is part of my diaspora story. And, you know, we share the island of Quisqueya, which the colonizers called it Hispaniola, but in fact it was Quisqueya, right? So let's keep it 100. And don't get, any Dominicans don't get mad at me because I'm always gonna tell you that you're Black. Because y'all need to claim that. And it's funny because I'm a light-skinned Latina, right? So, you know, I've had to navigate this world in a very different way, just because of, you know, just that I'm light-skinned. I'm actually, out of my entire family, I'm the lightest one of them all, but I always say I'm the blackest of them all, right? And so, coming to this country, when I came here, I was Julia Melania Mejia Peña, all right, y'all? And I did not want to speak Spanish. I did not want to be anything but accepted here in this country. And so what was interesting is that both of my parents left me in the Dominican Republic, and I was raised by my grandparents, and I didn't meet my parents until I came here when I was 5 years old to America. And that was my first memory of both of my parents, because they left in search of the American dream, as so many of us do, and leaving what I felt, you know, now as an adult, that the real paradise is in our homeland. And we come here, and it's really a nightmare. There is no dream about leaving the paradise that we all live in, right? And so, you know, I have come to recognize the politics of just navigating this space. And, you know, when I think about who we are and as Caribbeans here in the city of Boston, I think that there is the diaspora situation in the conversation that as islands, you know, if we start recognizing our unity and start recognizing our journey here, that we will probably be at a better place than what we have been led to believe, because there is a lot of richness in our Caribbean countries, right? There's a lot of good stuff that everybody goes there to exploit. And you know that, right? And they make it really intolerable for us to stay in our country, and then we have to come here. Now, I'm not anti-American, so for those who are following me, you got that Twitter situation, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, just for the record, is that there is always strength in our struggle, and we've been led to believe that we are not as powerful as we are. And I think that when I think about my Caribbean-ness, I think about the fact that yo hablo español, right? Que lo que, you know, Dominican, that's it, right? And that I can navigate, I can walk into spaces and now claim and be comfortable speaking Spanish. Even when I'm told that this is America, I'm like, yeah, and this is my America too, okay? Because before, I would see that as a deficit, and now I see that as an asset. And I think that the more we can claim our roots and show up as we are, I think the better that we'll all be because of it. And so I think that there's a beauty of the world that we are navigating in. And I'll end with this, because for those folks who know Dominicans, we have the best blowout, right? Because y'all see that picture right there. And y'all like, who is that? But let me just tell you that if you really want to know about the Caribbean culture and the colorism and all of the isms that exist, you know, I went to visit home, because I still call it home, even though I became a U.S. citizen. That's how I became a city councilor, so I'm legal Trump, okay? I went home in March, and I went and got my hair done, because my hair has always been the topic of conversation. And I grew up being told to comb my hair, always. And I went home recently, and I went to a Dominican salon, and they were like, oh, we're gonna put something, so, you know, I said, it's not a relaxer. She's like, no, es pa' que te dure más. I was like, okay. They killed my curls. And I think that that is part of the journey when we're talking about colorism and, you know, how we've been colonized and how we've been, you know, so I've had to cut my hair so I can get my curls back. And the reason why I'm sharing that here is because so much of who we are as Caribbeans and so much of who we are just as people, we're always trying to be whitewashed. We're always trying, and even in our own country and culture, there's still that stigma about what I should look like, right? And so I think that there's a lot of work to do in the Caribbean as it relates to really affirming people as they are here and there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for speaking to the richness, the complexity, the good stuff that is Caribbean-ness, as well as the challenges of Caribbean-ness. And loved the way we echolocate with the whippas. So it's a beautiful thing. So move on. I'm going to ask you to talk about your work here in Boston and how Caribbean-ness might inform it. And I'd like to begin with you, Councilor Mejia, Julia.
I'm a politician, you know.
Daughter of Boston and the DR, who won her council seat in 2019, as Monica mentioned, in a remarkable way, serving on several important committees on the council. You've called for a commission to examine what reparations would look like in Boston, and advocated for the creation of an Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs by the city. Could you begin by telling us why you felt the need for such an office, or why you feel the need for such an office?
So first, let me just say real quick, because I believe Yvette is Mother Sting is in the building, right, Yvette? Yes. That is my queen. And so we worked on establishing successfully here in the city of Boston, the most racist city in this country, a reparations task force. And we're both two Afro-Latinas, okay? And that is what it looks like when we're talking about solidarity. So I just want to say thank you, Yvette, for your leadership in that space, because we see you and we appreciate you and we love you. Now, you know there were a lot of people who were mad, right, that I did that? Because I wanted to get them even more mad. I was like, okay, I'm not going to end there. So we established an Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs because the diaspora, because we have so many Latinos, we have over 175,000 Latinos that live in the city of Boston, and we have a growing Caribbean community as well. And so through that process, we felt it was important to have a dedicated office to address the unique needs of the Caribbean community and the Latinx community, the Latino community here in Boston. And so for us, it was really an opportunity to change the conversation, because we have this mentality that it's always going to be, well, what about me? Well, what about us, right? Caribbeans have contributed millions of dollars to our economy, but yet they've come here and have had to struggle and to navigate, whether it be through language barriers that we've experienced here, whether it be to having access to contracts. There are very specific things that impact the Caribbean community and the Latino community that's different than the immigrant advancement. Because what they were trying to say to me was like, well, why don't you just do that under the immigrant advancement? I said, because not all Caribbeans and Latinos are immigrants. Hello, we were born here, but we still have needs. So let's just have some space for us to be able to have that. But through that conversation, what we decided is now, just for the record, the name of the office is the Office of Cultural Affairs. And as a result of working in community with others, now we have 5 different groups that we're targeting for policy and programming. Is Latino, Caribbean, Cape Verdean Creole, right? Asian, and African. We felt that we wanted to target the top 5 communities in the city of Boston that are not from the immigrant descent, right? They could be immigrant, they can have it both, right? We can go to the immigrant advancement or we can go to whatever office. The important thing is being able to create things where people can see themselves and their culture and their particular policy issues being addressed, because not one all size, fits all. And while we all eat bacalao, right? Everybody eat bacalao, right? Y'all eat bacalao, right? No matter what Caribbean country you're from, you eat bacalao, right? That's codfish. In case y'all don't know what that is, in Spanish it's codfish, right? I've been to Jamaica, So there are things that are similar, but there are also things that are very unique to certain cultures, and we wanted to make sure that we had an office. And now there's a director and 5 positions that have been created that will start this year to support those communities.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the amazing bridge building work that you do, and for your support of Caribbean and many more communities in the city of Boston. Okay. So Febo, I'd like to turn to you now. Extraordinary poet, performer, educator, dismantler of inherited toxic masculinity. The title of your first book, I say first because there's the expectation of more books, is
working on it.
Is Becoming an Island, which I'm reading as an evocation of Caribbean-ness, not only with the word island, but with that gerund becoming, suggesting incomplete or continuous action, which I really, really appreciate, this open-endedness, sense of constant evolution signified. So would you talk a little bit about the title as a way into your work? And we've got some slides. That
we can actually go to the first slide. That's the cover. Ooh, it's cute. On the left side, it is the mills from Lowell, which is where I'm from. I love the fact that I'm from Lowell, Mill City, 978 in the building all day, every day. And on the right side is the mountains of Canóvanas, where when I lived in Puerto Rico, where we live, it was my father's from. And I'll just read these excerpts, so you ain't gotta read them. Don't worry, you can follow along. You can follow along real quick. First one is an excerpt from Tonight I'm Cooking. Like the next person that yells, "English, please," when I am just giving directions to someone in Spanish, must be bitter. Like, they must be what they eat. Like, tonight, I will be an island. And so, becoming an island is a play on that line, on that last line of being told to speak English when I was just trying to give directions to someone on the train in Boston, and coming home that day, and as opposed to choosing violence or choosing to stay in that frustration, I chose to cook. I chose to cook some tostones, gotta do it. And so it was like one of these things. I'm like, I can choose to be locked, to be landlocked by all of this like negativity or all these other things, or I can choose to take what is happening and like either like dip it in the water or throw it, whatever. So this idea of that, right? Excerpt from Grown From. I was grown from arroz con gandules, from sofrito and adobo can fix any meal, from my house on Sundays looking like a Goya commercial. And so this idea of a lot of my Caribbean-ness shows up in how we gather and the reasons why we gather. It might be to celebrate a quinceañero, it might be to celebrate someone's a wedding, or it might just because it's a Friday or it's a Sunday and we want to cook and we want to have some good times. And so that definitely wanted to weave that into the book as much as possible. Next slide, please. This is my pops, looking real smooth, I love him so much. He passed away in 2021 from Alzheimer's, 6 months after my daughter has been born. And so the idea of losing a father around the same time I was becoming a father is something that really shows up. I love my pops, and also there's a lot of things that I inherited from him, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that I've had to unlearn, that has shown up in my life as pain that I've caused others, and I didn't know that I was causing pain. I was just doing exactly what I was bred to do. How would I know if I'm doing something wrong if I'm literally following it by the patriarchy book? You know what I mean? And so I just want to read this excerpt real fast. In the morning, I have a plane to Puerto Rico to catch, and these ashes need to come with me. But this urn isn't the type of urn made for travel. So before I unravel the top to transfer, I press play on El Cantante by Hector Lavoe. This certain salsa song is soundtrack to memories made when Papi was mobile enough to move, to walk. So we'd walk and talk to Target and sing and sound like we had coquilles stuck in our throats. He was a marathon runner, and to see him slowly but surely just shrivel because of Alzheimer's was very difficult. And so I tried to run a marathon in his name, and my spleen exploded, so I didn't do it. Next slide. Let's have fun. That's a story for a different day. This is my daughter Luna. She's better than me, and I'm excited to see who she's developing into. When she was born, I wanted to make sure to capture as many moments as possible, and I wrote a haiku for every diaper change that I did for the first 17 months of her life. 17 months, 17 syllables, you see what I'm saying? It's fine. And in doing this series, this opportunity to write this small little excerpts, but doing them over and over. By the time that I was done, I had over 2,000 haikus. And so in doing them, when I started, they were just poop jokes, because why wouldn't they be? And as I continued, it became real life started to weave itself in. My pop started to get more and more sick, and these were moments for me to capture some of that and have it for Luna, because how is she gonna miss a person that she doesn't remember meeting? And so I really wanted to keep these moments alive as much as possible. I just want to read the bottom left one, because that one's my favorite. I've imagined what fatherhood can look like, and real life is better. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is my partner in rhyme, my partner in time, spelt the food way, Ricky. We have a cooking and poetry show called Adobo Fish Sauce, and we have a lot of fun where we cook food. He's Cambodian, and so we do a nice little combination of foods from our cultures and perform on hot plates and really weave it in as much as possible. And that's my mom teaching me how to make some sorrullos, which I didn't know how to make until she taught me. And I just wanted to read these quick two excerpts real fast. I've been thinking a lot about the ways and how I want to live longer for my daughter, and being intentional about the foods that I put into my body, and how much I love my culture, and how much food from our culture was also made because of the scarcity that they had. So they used every single part of the pig, and the tail, so good. But I don't know what's in there. I don't know what that is. All my favorite foods want to love me to death. The sodium sees my blood pressure raised through the roof and thinks it a celebration. I cry, and my tears leave stains the same orange Goya Sazon packets leave on my hands when I'm trying to flavor the dead. And so just trying to be a little bit, I'm making my own adobo, making my own sazon, and just trying to, you know, just be a little bit more intentional about how that food and things show up. And last slide, just for the fun of it. Just last slide, just for the fun of it. There's no words on it. I'm a youth worker, and I love young people, and I'll throw myself on the floor if it makes a young person feel comfortable.
Thank you. Thank you, Febo, for your amazing work, your dynamic, fantastic poems. I especially love the code meshing that takes place, the flipping back and forth between languages, you know, the being as linguistically flexible as you are. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Althea,
Yes.
you have 3 jobs.
Hey, man. If you know, you know. And still have more. Yes.
And possibly a few more that I'm unaware of.
Yes.
This gives you Caribbean street cred. That's right. Caribbean immigrants never have just one job.
No.
Or at least that's a trope. Right? So not only are you an impresario, as Monica mentioned in the introductions, head of V-Style Productions, creating and delivering fashion projects in the New England area. You're a travel advisor. In 2013, you founded the Boston Caribbean Fashion Week. What led you to its founding? What told you Boston needed a Caribbean Fashion Week?
Ooh, that's a fun question. Ooh. But you forgot, I'm a daughter, I'm a niece, I'm a gardener, I'm a landscape. No, I was kidding. I actually do these things at my house. So, my turn. So, where does one begin? Wow. We'll start with the photo. So, just finished 10 years of producing and creating Boston Caribbean Fashion Week. And Boston Caribbean Fashion Week, the main pillars that makes up BCFW, it's beauty, culture, fashion, and style. Because when you see it in the Caribbean, you see those elements there. And going to Barbados as a child, and especially during crop over time for Barbados, and you see the different types of like the cultural festivity activities that lead up to the big day, which is, the big day is Kadooment Day, which for other countries is the big carnival day, but for Barbados it's called Kadooment Day. And so you just see there's like so much different cultures of like the theater performances, the artwork that's going on. It's color, it's nothing but color. You can't escape color. As much as I'm a person that, as shocking as this is that you see me in color right here, I'm a very dark person in terms of like, I like my grays, my blacks, it's great. And plus, again, multi-jobs. My other job that I have, I'm behind the scenes. I'm wearing black all the time. So there are those few moments I do get to step out in front and let you be known. I'm here, hi, you see me. So with creating Boston Caribbean Fashion Week, why I wanted to do it, it started off as an idea. Honestly, it was just that. It was, what else could go wrong? What could happen? I mean, it's just an idea. But to take it back further, before I got to stepping out on my own with this Fashion Week, I was, again, behind the scenes. You would have never known my name because I was the one at the other folks' local fashion shows. I was producing and helping backstage as the freelance choreographer, working with the designers, doing this, that. You never would know my name. Everybody else backstage does, but up front, no. So there was that. And when folks would see the shows and everything, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you should do your own show, you should do your own show. And I'm like, not before the time. Because if I was gonna create something, I wanna make sure that it made sense. And I was gonna do something and do it right. And I'd rather take my time about that. And within the fashion scene for Boston, I guess you could say, pay my dues. I've been in this game for about a little over 20 years. So again, you may not know my name, but at some point you have seen my work. Or if you've done a local fashion show, you've worked with me in some capacity. You may not realize it. It's just that was how I was all that time. And so it just started off with just an idea. And from there, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do a fashion show, and I've always been that one that, once I learned about my background and my Caribbean, I guess you could say, ness, I've always been that one that wanted to educate people about it. I'm like, do you know about Barbados? Do you know about Jamaica? I was like the little tourism baby that had no idea about tourism stuff, but would tell you all the goodness and greatness about it and everything from there. So when I finally have an opportunity to do it, why not? And then because of the fact that I've in fashion and with my grandmother being a seamstress on my mother's side, fashion was always there in the family. And it's just been that thing. Not if I make clothes, no. I'm literally Denise with the thread, with the shirt. I'm that one. But I will give you a stage and let you promote your work, and I will give you that platform. So don't ask me to make anything, but I will give you a show. So with that, I just took a chance and said, why not? And who knew that it would have been successful? So 10 years later, I was just like, huh. So the previous photo you saw, that was year 10, that designer. And then with Boston Caribbean Fashion Week, I didn't lock it. I don't want to lock it because I don't want to just strictly show just Caribbean designers, because I'd have been done by year 2. Because designers don't designers, especially Caribbean designers, you don't necessarily advertise yourself as a Caribbean designer. If you do, you are a very small pocket. But if anything, they may show like a collection that's reflective of that. So you may see those moments and pieces. But to say that I'm a Caribbean designer, they're far and few to find. But I never locked my platform to say, so it's more of like an international platform. So the designer that you saw, that is Leila P. That's Katarina Abaru, and her background, she is Cape Verdean. So that was that. For this one that you're seeing here is the ICA, our amazing, fun, family, friend, partner. If you ever come to the first Friday for July for the Caribbean night, that's us. That's us. Hey, how you doing? So we give you a taste of what is to happen in October. So we give you an installation with some fashion. So you see the girls that are in the stands in the back there. And then we give you, as you can do the next photo, we give you the costumes, the pretty masks. So the pretty costumes with the local masqueraders that are happening that later on, later on, because we happen in July, and the big carnival that happens in Boston is in August. So these are folks that they have previous costumes that can show, because they don't necessarily show their new stuff at the ICA, which totally understandable. But this one is Boston Socaholics. That's by Andrea Mercury. And then the previous photo, that was by Charisse Rollins Scott, and her background is Barbados and Jamaica as well too. So there's those who I will showcase and give platforms to showcase their work, and just with the fashion element, just make it happen, I guess. Why not do that in terms of that? Next photo. So with the next photo, this one is actually really interesting, and it was one of those of long-term goals, and look how God is working. Because that's in Jamaica. And I can proudly say, in 2020, I produced a show in Jamaica when we couldn't do anything else anywhere in the world. And because of the network, and because of the fact that working in the travel business and making connections and calls, totally not travel because we were not going anywhere, I was able to make a show happen. Because again, what does a fashion week look like when you can't show it? And fashion is one of those visual things. It receives well in person. but we can't let the fashion show die because it's like, well, what are we gonna do? So that year of 2020, we did the business of fashion. We took it back because everybody's so caught up in producing the show. I mean, we gotta do the runway show, but designers miss out on the business. They just know, like, I gotta produce a collection, but what about the business? Because this is a business. And to understand what a fashion show is, it's a marketing tool. So you need to change your perspective. So now we were working with the city and trying to get some like webinars going in terms of like just simple things of tools that were there. And at the same time, I'm like, well, we gotta have some type of Caribbean connection of fashion. And I was like, well, tap into my travel side and work with the Jamaican Tourism Board and found designers that were able to safely, please note safely, because it was very much 2020, safely produce a show. So this was in Jamaica, and this was in Rose Hall, in front of Rose Hall. And Rose Hall has a very, okay, that was a good. So Rose Hall has a very deep and interesting, wonderful history as well too. So we had swimwear designers, we had male designers in terms of clothing as well too. And yeah, it was able to happen. And the thing is, you know, when you sit down in front of your, process, you're like, what your short-term goals are and what your long-term goals are. And like one of my long-term goals, which was like a moment in time that I didn't think that it was happening, was I wanted to have the Fashion Week now open up that I can now showcase designers from the Caribbean and bring them to the US. Even if it's a start. And this was my start. Now that we're back in person and playing catch up with like getting the audience and gaining back, but we're taking it there. So I was just like, I was actually able to achieve that, and that was one of the designers. And I love the photo because this is the evening wear, but yet the designer was able to do mask. So I always like to show this photo because it's always like that staple reminder of like, this is 2020. But 2020 can look fabulous, please note this. So, and we were able to show that. And this one, I forgot his last name, but this is Mark, and Mark is also the director for Miss Universe Jamaica. So he helps coach the girls to get ups for Miss Universe for Jamaica. And Jamaica has a tendency of placing well because of him. So, because he coaches his girls very well. But yeah, it was just the fact of we were able to showcase Jamaican designers, and then also I was able to connect with a masquerade or a mask camp in St. Martin, and was able to showcase their costumes as well too. Everything was all done safely, recordings, and send in the videos, and we were still able to have our Fashion Week. It was totally different, but we pulled through and we made it through. So that's me.
All right, it sounds like amazing work, and it sounds like something you started in Boston now has gone back, if you will, to the Caribbean, and I love that sort of that motion.
The roundness of it all, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gabriel, like Althea and most everyone, you have more than one job. You're a visiting assistant professor at MassArt, the deputy director of the Essex Art Center in Lawrence, a visual artist. Clearly, the cred is upon you. Beyond perhaps necessity, I wonder if this more than one job business might not have to do with transdisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity as an outlook, as an aesthetic approach, as a pedagogy, as an act of decolonization, and a rethinking of what art is or what art should do. Your work draws from many sources and areas: legal proceedings, personal archives, contemporary visual culture, to explore really compelling topics. And your public-facing art is deeply compelling, in my opinion, as we see with the recent area installation and project entitled La Bodega de Mis Sueños, depicted here. Would you begin here? And I'd love to hear about how people reacted to this, and then would love to hear more about your work.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that. So much of my work, it's really soaked in my Caribbean-ness, whether that's immediately perceptible or not. But just thinking about language and its nuances and memory and its elasticity, its fallibility, really are the pillars of my work. And over the last few years, it's really been focused on my public art practice. And so La Bodega de Mis Sueños is an installation that's currently up in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, and it'll be on display until spring 2025. And it is a completely fictitious bodega storefront. So what you see behind these signs is nothing. It's just, it's brick. There's no interior space. So, you know, I designed and had printed all of the images, the lettering, the glass and aluminum door was a found door. And so this is on one of the facades of the Fitchburg Art Museum. And I was interested in creating a space like this because as a kid in Miami, some of my most vivid memories are walking from our house, me and my grandfather. We would walk down to this little corner store called La Campana, the Bell. And you know, I'd go there with him on Saturday mornings, and we would meet all of his old Cuban friends, and they would be there with their guayaberas, just very crisp, and then the pants with the little pleat in them, and they would just be kind of hanging out and talking politics and whatever. So thinking about stores just as a place for connection. I mean, so much of what Febo was saying, thinking about connection and communication as a very powerful element of Caribbean-ness. But if you look at some of the details here, some things are not like the others, right? I mean, so there's dulces and bizcochos and sweets and cakes, but there's also esperanzas as hopes, añoranzas as longings, deseos as in desires. Looking at the types of payment that's accepted, with cash and credit. I mean, there's also big ideas and longings and gossip and unrealized dreams, right? And I was interested in doing this in this space because it tapped into not only my personal memories, but looking at the growing Spanish-speaking population, especially from the Caribbean in central Massachusetts. Also, years ago, my research showed that this part of the museum, which is comprised of different buildings, was actually storefronts up until the mid-1980s, sort of a way to reactivate that. And one of the things that has defined my Caribbean experience so much is thinking about nostalgia and thinking about the past. I mean, growing up in the Cuban community in Miami, everyone is talking about Cuba all the time. But especially at the time that I was growing up there, it wasn't like people were going there all the time either. And so, here, and there's a phone number which works. It's 978-233-8040 if you want to give it a call. And people are invited to leave a voicemail about their dreams, whatever a dream might be. And some of that too taps into what you were saying, Julia, about just this falsity of the American dream and what our misconceived ideas are about that. So, sometimes some people's reactions have been excitement that something's opening up and just the brown paper behind the door. It's like, well, there's nothing back there, right? So it's like you're waiting for something that isn't coming. But in many ways, what I wanted to foster with this work isn't just, it's not to create a sense of disappointment. It's to do the opposite. It's to create a sense of hope and inspiration and kind of invite people to realize the subtleties in their surroundings and how things are more complex than they seem. So often, growing up in Miami, people that would either go to Cuba for the first time or that had been away from Cuba for so long and then go back again, it was always different than what they expected. And I have found, to a certain extent, that's even the case for Miami. I mean, one of my dearest friends has spent the last decade trying to just professionally get himself back to Miami. And he was in Afghanistan, he was in Hawaii, and he was in New York, and finally he got this gig in Miami. He's been there for the last year, and it's like, no, man, it's different. It's not the same. So this idea of carrying something with you and being inspired by something is where that comes from. This was a billboard. It was a series of 9 billboards that were up in Boston between 2020 and 2021. The project was called No es fácil, it ain't easy. And each of these billboards, this was prime pandemic time, they went up in a neighborhood in Boston, or neighborhoods with high COVID rates, which also meant that there were high populations of essential workers there, which meant that there were high populations of immigrants, and in large part those were Spanish-speaking immigrants. So, these messages were sort of a way to provide a sense of comfort and solidarity. Art wasn't going to save anybody, but perhaps it could provide those things. So, esta vaina no es fácil, pero no te atormente. This thing ain't easy, but don't stress yourself out. The phrase no es fácil, I mean, it means it ain't easy no matter where the Spanish is being spoken, but it has a particular flavor in Cuban Spanish, which is very much the sense of I got you. I mean, you can be standing in a line in Havana or Miami, for that matter, and if you're just waiting for everything, you turn around and be like, no es fácil, and it's just like, yeah, I got you. Like, we're in this together. So tremendo lío, pero tú sigue. What a mess, but keep it moving. This is also a way to subvert the commercialism that billboards are normally for, and just taking a space where things are usually sold and advertised, and then creating a space for comfort. Also, I mean, I spent a decade working here in the court system as an interpreter. And one of the things that stuck with me is just how diverse Boston really is, more diverse than many people think it might be. Thinking of Spanish speakers from all over the Spanish-speaking world, ranging from Puerto Rico to Mexico to Equatorial Guinea and everywhere in between, in thinking about the types of populations that this could reach. ¿Qué pasa, USA? Hey. Yeah. So if you don't know this program, this was a sitcom that ran on PBS from 1977 to 1980. And I would watch the reruns of it on the PBS syndicate in Miami. And it was about a Cuban-American family living in Miami. It was, the grandparents, parents, and teenage kids living all under one roof. The grandparents were very, very tied to the island. The parents, sort of, and then the kids kind of not as much. They were much more Miamian. And the show was completely bilingual and would very fluidly go between English and Spanish. And I certainly saw a lot of my childhood in there. I was sharing with someone before this talk that even the grandmother in this show looked like my grandmother. And so this is a shot from a video piece I had done where I turned down the volume and I read aloud a letter. And it was a letter that my grandfather had written once he left Cuba and was living in Miami. And it was tapping into these same ideas about the American dream or undream, about his discomfort being in Miami, and how there was a sense of relief that never quite came. And I chose this episode because the plot line here is that the grandmother is feeling very unappreciated. And she says, to her grandkids, you know what, that's it. And she's packing her suitcase, and she says, voy a regresar a Guanabacoa. I'm going back to Guanabacoa, which is, ironically, the Havana suburb that my mom grew up in. And, also now, being able to travel between the U.S. and Cuba is relatively easy. But at that time, there wasn't that. The travel was only going in one direction, and people would only leave. So just the searing power and emotion in that phrase to say, hey, I'm going back, at the time that line was being said, was something that really struck me.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just really appreciating how thoughtful dialogic your work is, how it engages community, how it is open to our gossip, our wishes, our undreams, and our dreams, how it speaks to both the Caribbean and to Boston. We have run over. Very over. And
You got a bunch of Caribbean folks on the stage. I don't know if you thought it was going to end on time.
Okay, we're done. We have run over. We were going to have open this moment up to questions from the audience, but I don't think we have time for that. Okay, so we want to give people time to go upstairs to the galleries and downstairs too. So I would like to thank each of the panelists here. Febo, Althea, Gabriel, Julia, for their wonderful work, their wonderful thoughts, and their contribution to this, I think, fantastic conversation, an exploration of the Caribbean and Caribbean-ness in Boston. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.